Hello and welcome to the Poultry Health Research Network here at the University of Guelph. I'm Ryan Snyder, the coordinator, and I'll be your host today. Today you're going to see an interview from one of our graduate students who's working on poultry research right here at the university. Enjoy! Welcome to the Poultry Health Research Network. Today we've got Ana Rentsch with us. Ana, thank you for joining us.
Sure, thanks.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background. How did you come to get involved with poultry research and health?
Okay. So I always liked all kinds of animals, basically. By training, I'm a behavior biologist. So I'm not specific, I never trained in agriculture or specifically poultry, but I always wanted to do applied science, so applied research and not just fundamental research, which is what my undergrad's in. So for my master's, I got a position in a poultry welfare group. So I did my master's in Switzerland in laying hen welfare, poultry welfare, and I just got hooked, I guess. So I stuck with it.
Yeah. So are you from Switzerland then?
I am from Switzerland, yeah.
Oh, born and raised. And in terms of the poultry industry, what's been the biggest transition for you from Switzerland to Canada?
Yeah, so that's been a bit of a difference because Switzerland, especially in laying hens, which is my expertise, we have not had any caged housings for the last 20-ish years.
Right.
So once I got here, it's actually been my first experience with caged housings. But my research is in cage-free houses, so this actually gives me the opportunity to work in a country on cage-free housing that is right now transitioning. So applications to this or improvements to this will have impacts right now, so it's a lot more interesting to work here where this is happening right now versus to just improving a system that has been established for a while.
Fantastic. Well, we're glad that you're here and you're bringing some expertise with you from a country that's been doing this for quite some time. So tell us about your program and the lab and the department that you're in.
Mm-hmm. So I'm in the Animal Bioscience department and my lab is the Poultry Welfare Lab. I'm working under Tina Widowski, so Dr. Tina Widowski. We are doing all sorts of poultry welfare related work. There's people working on broilers, slow grower strains of broilers. There's other people working on nutrition's effect on welfare, and my aspect is housing and the relation to welfare, so different housing systems.
Fantastic. And this is part of your PhD program?
This is my PhD program, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just at the end of my first year of my PhD.
Okay. And so you said you're specifically looking at layers.
Mm-hmm.
And which age groups are you working with?
So I'm working with pullets.
Okay.
So that would be age day 1 to week 17 roughly.
Okay.
So the way laying hens are housed is that they are being kept in a rearing barn for the first 17 weeks, give or take. And after that they will be transported into an adult barn where they live the rest of their lives. And in my project, I'm looking at the different housings for pullets and what the effect is on their development.
Okay. And so what, I guess specifically, are you investigating with that?
Mm-hmm. So I am looking at different complexities. So how the complexity during the early life experiences can affect the development of laying hens. I'm looking at specific traits or specific skill sets that will be important for the laying hens later on in their adult environment. So for example, they need to be able to transition vertically between different tiers within their aviaries. So they need to have good muscles, good legs, good wing strength, all good bone strength, all these kind of things that will help them reduce the risk of injury once they're adults, or just will help them navigate their system that they will live in for the rest of their lives.
Right, and so you're looking at aviary systems. Are you also comparing enriched systems and battery cages, or?
No,
nope.
I am looking at 3 different kinds of aviary systems. So because the aviary system it's not the one aviary system. There are huge variations, especially for pullets, because there are very few regulations for pullets, for young laying hens. So the variation in complexity is huge. So what I'm looking at is if this difference or let's say, if a hen that's growing up with the maximum amount of three-dimensional space and in a very complex environment, will she be prepared differently to the later life compared to a pullet that is reared in a aviary still, but maybe an aviary that doesn't offer as much space or as much complexity?
Right. And so some of these measures are both behavioral and physiological that you're measuring.
Yes, so mostly behavior in my part, seeing as I'm a ethologist. I'm working with different people too who are more knowledgeable about physiology. I'm not trained in this, so I have a master's student who's working within my project too, who is looking at the bone and muscle structure and weights and strength and these kind of things. I am mostly looking at behavior, so that will include cognition, so spatial navigation more specifically. That would be fearfulness, for example, how easily are they startled, so these kind of behavioral traits.
Yep. And how would you run some of these tests on the birds?
So how would I run these tests? There's one test that I just piloted last week where we have a T maze. So as the name implies, it's a maze shaped in the form of a T. So the chicken will be placed at the bottom end of the tunnel of the T and has to walk up to the fork where she can go either left or right. And then for let's say chicken A will have a food reward sitting on the right side of this T maze at every time. And I will place her in the T maze for a certain amount of time repeatedly, and I will see how long it takes her to learn where her food is. And then for another chicken, the food reward might be on the other side, so to balance things out statistically. So this would be one kind of test that I could be doing.
Excellent. And have you started or completed any of these trials so far, or where are you at with your trials?
So right now I just completed a pilot trial that was very small scale, just to see how the methodologies for the different tests, how well they work. Most of those tests have been used in laying hens, but adult laying hens. So with pullets, sometimes it's a little bit different what their motivations are, their size obviously. So some of those tests I had to pilot to see what works and how it works. So I just finished this and I will start my actual trial in 3 weeks.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
And how long do you have the birds on trial for?
So I will have 4 consecutive flocks that will be on trial for 17 weeks each, with a bit of a gap in between. So the whole thing will take until end of year next year.
And are you looking at one specific line of layer chicken or multiple lines?
So I'm looking at 2 different lines, but of similar genetics. So I'm looking at Lohmann chickens, but I have a brown hybrid and a white hybrid, just because they're quite different.
Right. And this is what the Canadian layer production system uses today?
They're most common strains that are used in North America, yes.
Excellent. Very good. So what has been the most exciting part, or do you think will be the most exciting part of your project?
Well, that's hard to say. I'm super excited about most of it, actually. I'm specifically fascinated by the development of behavior, which is also why I applied for this position. So the whole developmental part of it, seeing how those chickens that are genetically very similar, seeing as they're bred for so long and it's very genetically closed line of chickens, how they can be so similar genetically, but then depending on how they are raised, there's gonna be differences.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, probably. And there's even gonna be individual differences of chickens within the same system. So that's another thing that I'm really fascinated by. So I'm just super curious for all of the tests that I'm doing. I think the cognition part is the newest for me. So this part I'm super hyped for because I never did a cognition test before with animals. I did fear tests before, but not cognition. So, so this is super exciting.
Yeah. And are you trying out any new techniques that have never been published before?
Yes, so we'll see if it works. I am trying out a new technique for chickens, not generally a new technique for tracking animals. It has been used before in insects, in in bees mostly, in other kinds of small animals that live maybe in a hive or something, in something close and small. So using it in an aviary is going to be challenging. I've been working on it now for half a year, trying to figure out the little kinks and just to get it to work. I think I'm closer.
Yep.
We'll see how well it works. So this method would use QR codes.
Wow.
So the same as you have on lots of products. So those chickens would have a QR code, and I'm taking stills with action cameras and run it through some programs that would then identify that chicken and would tell me the coordinates of the specific chicken. If it works, and that's still a big if, if it works, it'd be really cool, because it's in the end it's a super cheap method. Compared to things like RFID tracking, which is done quite often in chickens, which is super expensive. So it might work, it might not work, but
very cool. And that could be applied to broilers as well at some point.
Oh sure, yes. It'd actually be easier in broilers because they don't have the three-dimensional space. The difficulty in aviaries is of tracking birds in aviaries is that it's a whole metal structure that interferes with most signals. So even with RFID, you have to be careful. And then you have those three-dimensional structures. Chicken can be overlapping because one of them might be walking up a ramp that is actually see-through, and another chicken might be underneath that ramp. And so it's quite dark. It has lots of little spaces and small spaces. It's very complicated, all made of metal, and you have so many chickens. And if you know chickens, they don't ever stand still.
That's right.
They move constantly. So any kind of tracking in aviaries is super difficult. So for broilers, yeah, sure, that would work.
Yeah. Very cool. So what are some of the general conclusions that you expect to find out of your project?
So what I'm expecting, I don't know yet, which is why I'm doing the trial. But what I am expecting is that chickens or pullets that are reared in more complex environments, that they would be better at things like spatial navigation, so that they develop, like their hippocampus develops better towards the complex navigation that they need to do in aviaries, or that their muscles might be stronger too, that their bones might be stronger due to just being more active, more load bearing. We know this from humans. If you exercise more, your muscles are your bones are gonna be stronger. So I'm hoping to see this in the chickens. I'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. And you mentioned that you have some collaboration going on within your lab. Are you collaborating with other labs on this project, or is it mostly within?
So this is part of a huge cluster project with different universities involved, different professors involved, lots and lots of students. So I'm collaborating, for example, with some students from McGill, some other students from different labs at our university. So it's a very big.
That's good to hear.
Project, yes.
And welfare becomes a more and more important issue for the industry every year.
Oh, yes, I hope so.
And so it's good to hear that there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of research going on in that area. So some of these results will likely have implications for the poultry industry, both locally and internationally. Can you comment on what implications your research could have?
So what I'm hoping is that at the end of this, if a farmer wants to change from his cages that he still might have towards an open system, that my research will be able to help him decide maybe on the type or design of this aviary. I think at the end of it, the goal is to have healthier chickens in the adult barns, because they have been reared for these barns and are prepared to live in them. And if we have healthier chickens, we're hopefully going to have happier farmers, happier consumers.
Absolutely.
So I think the ultimate goal is just to increase welfare of laying hens.
Yeah, and that's great. So from your results, where do you expect to publish or present these afterwards?
So I can see several options. You could, on one hand, you can publish specifically talking to other researchers and scientists, or you could publish on a platform that's more accessible by farmers. I think both is very important. So I guess we'll have to see what part might be more important in what corner, and maybe how we could bridge the gap a bit between those two platforms. I cannot tell you a journal right now that I'm thinking of, also because I don't have any results yet, because I haven't done the study yet. So it would be hard to guess this right now. But I think this is definitely something that we need to keep in mind. Who are we talking to, and who needs the information? And I think those two corners is scientists on one hand and farmers on the other hand.
Fantastic. So what are some of the careers that you're looking forward to after you're finished your program? Are you looking at academics or industry?
So this is not for a while. I will be here forever. But I think I want to stay in research. I really do enjoy it. If it's in collaboration with a university or being employed by a university, that's a possibility. I could see myself working for a government organization, for example, testing equipment, to see if it's improving or if it might be a risk to welfare, these kind of things. But I definitely enjoy research for now, so I think I'm going to stick with research for the time being. Yeah,
fantastic. Is there any messages that you'd like to send towards the poultry industry or academic industry at all?
So what I generally think, having come here from another country, from another continent, is that communication between the different areas is super important. I've learned so much here of things that are just being done and no one even questions when it's being done here, that I've never heard before, and I'm sure it will be the same vice versa. So I think communicating globally between the same areas of research, but different areas globally, would be so important and could improve. It could improve research for one thing, and then it could maybe enhance the improvement for welfare in the end. So that's sort of what I'm thinking about right now. That would be really cool if we could have a bit of a more open research globally. Yeah.
Fantastic. This has been another Poultry Health Research Network student interview. Thank you so much for your time, Ana.
Thank you for inviting me. Okay.